Hello, everyone. This is episode 2 of my latest ILG 243 project. I just picked this fan up and I've been doing a little bit of work to it. I cleaned up this back bullet cover. Um, you can see paint shined up pretty nice in some areas. And I'm going to be making a little compilation of videos that have to deal with cleaning the motor on this. Not in depth, just a brief cleaning. Later on, I do plan on taking this completely apart and removing the stator from the frame and actually, spray varnishing the windings again and all of that kind of good stuff. But for now, I just do a brief cleaning on it and check out the bearings because this fan was making a clicking noise. And I discovered, well, I didn't really discover what it was, but I cleaned the bearings a little bit and cleaned some of the debris out, and the noise has gone away. And I also added on, made a little modification. I added a spring washer behind the one bearing so that it would take up some of the slack. Because after cleaning everything, I discovered that the shaft had some end play. So without further ado, I'll start the next clip and we'll just go from there. Okay, so the fan blade actually came off really easily. It looks like there's two witness marks of the set screw on here in slightly different positions. So that indicates that the fan blade had at some point been removed and put back on. This motor is really filthy and dirty. I'm not sure what it's going to look like on the inside, but we are going to find out. Whoa, this is tight. So, start backing these screws off. I have no idea what the condition of this motor is like, so you will find out. I know the bearings, first video I made of this, the bearings were nice and silent, and then when I built the stand and repositioned everything on the stand, the fan started making some noise. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there. I think maybe it just got some dirt lodged in there somewhere. Okay. I'm going to use a wooden paint stirrer to knock this loose, or try to at least, so I don't damage anything. Okay. So, sometimes they come off easy, sometimes not. Try to give it one more try at this. Okay. What else do I have to use? Let's see. Maybe an aluminum punch. Let me see. This rod is kind of really too long for this, but give it a shot and see what happens here. Oh, it's starting to move. It's cruddy, this one. Whew. Yep, we're moving. see if I can even get any rotation out of that. Let's see. All right, so I've gotten the front end bell and the rotor out of this, and you can see that the stator is pretty cruddy. Now I don't see anything that looks like damage, but I will really be able to see it better once it's all cleaned out. I mean, there's stuff underneath here. You can kind of see through to the back, but it's just really filthy. So, still has the orange paint coating on everything here in the middle, which they always had, so that's good. But yeah, definitely this thing is due for a cleaning. Alright, now I want to vacuum some of this junk out of here, and carefully with a brush try to loosen up some of this dirt. Definitely do not want to disturb these stator windings, so just using a soft paintbrush will not hurt the winding at all, but it will help get the debris out of here. Probably have to end up hitting this with some compressed air as well, and maybe I'll use some electronics cleaner or something to spray down the winding a little bit. Even the top, oh my goodness. Okay, well, that is definitely a start, but there's a long way to go with this. Looking at the rotor and the front end bell, I'm having a heck of a time getting this apart. My puller that I have here, it doesn't quite expand wide enough to be able to reach around and push this shaft out and grab around the end bell. So I'm trying to figure out some other way that I have means of doing this. But down inside here, it's just really cruddy and dirty, and I think that's part of why that bearing just does not want to come out. So it's going to be a little bit interesting. The rest of this it all looks good, it's just dirty. So once it's cleaned, it's going to be significantly better. Well, I ended up getting the bearing to move. I just used 2 pieces of wood blocks and just kind of like hammered down with my hands on the edges gently, and it did actually start to move. So once I get this out, I'll be able to wipe the outside of the bearing, clean up the bearing journal a little bit, and I mean, eventually I'm going to put new bearings on it, but for now, at least everything will be clean. Okay, so now that I got all of the grime and grit dirt that was inside of the bearing journals removed, the bearings actually, this is exactly the same problem with this fan that I had with this fan, and the reason that it runs so quietly now is because of a spring washer that I used to take up the slack that was in the end play in the bearings. So this is exactly how that motor used to be. If you look, see how I can slide this in and out? That's the actual, the bearings are pressed onto the shaft on the rotor. So the whole entire bearing is actually sliding back and forth inside of the bearing journals. And not only could that possibly create problems down the line, wear, whatever, it also creates noise. If this thing is constantly possibly banging around as the fan is running, you can definitely have some noise issues. And I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to put the fan blade on the shaft as it is now that this is freed up and it can move. And I'm going to see if there's any kind of noise of any type when the fan starts. And then I'm going to take this back apart and I'm going to put a spring washer into the uh, I think for this one, I'm going to do the rear bearing. I would prefer to do the front bearing on these since the fan blade, the load is pushing against the back. But the only issue is I don't have a spring washer large enough for the front bearing. These ILG fans like this used a larger bearing in the front than they did in the rear. So we'll see how this goes. A little experiment time. All right, so you can see here, I can pull the shaft in and out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try starting it first in the outer position, and we'll see if it moves toward the back from the thrust of the fan blade. Turn it off. I do believe that I could see it move to the back. But we'll see. Yeah, that looks like it's all the way pushed. Yep, that was all the way against there. So now I'll start it with it against the back, and we'll see if we hear any kind of noises or anything. Not as bad as the way the other 243 was, but I could hear a little tiny bit of that kind of a vibration, kind of buzzing noise to it. And we'll see if that goes away after I put the spring washer in. Okay, so now I have the preload spring installed, and like I said, ideally you would want to put it on the front side since the fan blade thrust is pushing against the back bearing. But for my situation, I only had the right size spring for the rear bearing. But as you can see now, if I push on the shaft, it springs right back out again. So now that has a preload on it, which if I start the motor without anything, no blade on it, let's see what it sounds like. Wow, that's interesting. Notice how it kind of quieted down after it made, maybe a few hundred revolutions. Well, actually, probably not even that many. But I think my idea of why that just quieted down is in the bearing races. So you've got, how can I best describe this? So you have, let's pretend this is a ball, and you've got a race like this and a race, on the other side. With the preload spring, it pushes them like this a little bit. Obviously, that's heavily exaggerated, but it creates, it takes all the slop out of the bearings. If they're like this, they could bounce around a little bit, because even though it don't seem like it, there's a little tiny bit of play between the two races. So when you have that preload, it squeezes them sideways a little bit, and that gives you, it takes out any of the slack in the bearings. Now, the noise quieting down is probably because when these bearings used to be riding dead in the center of the groove, all of the grease probably squeezed out to each side. So now that I had a preload on there, it was starting to ride in a different part of the groove, and it was probably had to squeeze the grease back out again and around that new path that it's taking. So let's see if it starts again and sounds. Yeah. Seems to be pretty quiet, at least for old bearings like this. So we'll see what happens. The shaft, this motor has, all these ILGs have pretty heavy rotors in them, and once they get spinning, they will spin for quite a while. Let me make sure that flat is lined up properly. Okay, let's see what we get. Wow. I'm not sure if you were able to hear the difference on camera, but I could definitely hear the difference in person. Wow, I can't believe it. It made quite a difference. I still want to get new bearings for this fan, but they're tolerable for now, I guess you could say. Yeah, I'm really amazed by that. So, simple little trick for these. There should not be end play in your motor for a ball bearing like this. If you can just take the shaft and pull it in and out, then you've got an issue there you need to address. And what I did was I went on Amazon and I bought this little kit here. Whoa, I'm really zoomed in. Let me zoom back out a little bit. This kit, and this kit has different size spring washers. And this is actually what I just installed right behind the rear bearing. So this flattens down a little bit when you assemble the motor, but that puts a constant load, side load against the bearing, and will make them perform better and longer. So hope you all enjoyed that, and stay tuned for whenever I post the next video on this. That'll be episode 3, and thank you for watching.